Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Are you exhausted? I am as well. I cannot stand daylight savings time. I want it gone. I want it gone. Donald Trump, please, if you're listening, write an executive order getting rid of daylight savings time. I know you don't like it. I don't like it. And a lot of people don't like it. According to a new poll, 54% of Americans are sick of daylight savings time and they want standard time year round and they don't want the clocks to change at all. Okay, so there's multiple reasons why I don't like daylight savings times. Actually, there are some studies out there that show that there is an increased risk of heart attacks, strokes, health issues around this time. So that's number one, the number one reason why I'd like to just go to standard time. Number two, it's just annoying to change all the clocks in my house. Number three, I am a morning person. I've always been a morning person, and I want more daylight in the morning. So more morning daylight keeps people awake, keeps people alert, and makes us more productive in the mornings, right? And I know you're a morning person as well because you're listening to this program, Conservative Cat, okay? So without changing the clocks, we can have more consistent sleep. We're going to be more productive. I mean, it's just win, 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 win. Now with daylight savings time, you get things like energy savings. I don't even really understand how that kind of works. Energy savings, more daylight in the evening hours, especially summer, and more daylight can reduce the number of traffic accidents. That's the proponents of daylight savings time say that it saves energy. I'll have to look into that argument. I don't see how it saves energy. Maybe like because it stays lighter out for longer. You don't have to turn on the lights on in your house. I really don't care, green weenies. Okay, I don't care. Light a candle. That saves energy, right? Light a candle. If you're that concerned about turning your lights on for an extra hour, they say energy savings is why daylight savings is a good thing. No, it's not a good thing. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. Losing that extra hour of sleep really does make a difference. All right. We have so much news to get to this morning. I want to get to this bizarre clip. I saw it. It's gone viral. I think it's hilarious. And it's an easy news story to wake you up this morning. This woman, she has a bizarre episode on an airplane. Now, this one is very different from all the other ones I've ever seen because she strips completely naked and she runs up and down the aisle. She throws her naked body on this flight attendant. And what was really bizarre about this little episode that she had is that she hasn't been charged yet, and there's no indication that she will be. And I hope it's unclear if she's going to be fined or if charges are going to be filed. At least she should be fined, public indecency or whatever. And I understand she had a mental breakdown, but we can't be proponents of mental illness. Like we have to be pretty strong against this kind of behavior, because if you don't come out and you charge this woman and you don't charge her at all, people are going to keep doing this kind of stuff. Okay. So, I mean, clearly she's out of her mind, but we've got to charge her with public indecency or something, because otherwise people are just going to keep doing this. And I understand that flight anxiety is at an all-time high because planes are crashing at an alarming rate, and it's not under Donald Trump. Okay, if you look at President Joe Biden, he had more plane crashes in 2024 than Donald Trump has had in 2025. And I understand it's only been a couple of months under Donald Trump, but the plane crashes were they were growing under President Joe Biden. They were increasing under President Joe Biden. It's the same thing with the eggs, right? The left didn't talk about the plane crashes under President Joe Biden, and now all of a sudden they're talking about the plane crashes, the media. Okay, they didn't talk about the egg prices, and then all of a sudden they're started talking about the egg prices under Donald Trump. So we're going to get to that. We're also going to get to this woman. This is a big problem here in the state of Illinois, squatters' rights as well as the state of Massachusetts. This woman, she bought a house, and most blue states have squatters' rights and like where squatters can live there. She bought a house, and the courts told her that she couldn't move in because there was a squatter there. And she's been like paying for the squatter to live there on top of the apartment that she's living in, this woman, after buying this house. So moral of the story here is don't buy foreclosed homes in a blue state because the laws in Illinois also are really crappy when it comes to squatters because squatters have all kinds of rights here in the state of Illinois. Your Democrat legislature has made sure of that. So I want to get to that, but also the former NIH director. I've got a lot of friends from high school, college. They're big mad about some of these science projects or some of this science funding research being pulled from like Doge is canceling their funding. Okay. All I've got to say about that is if your funding has been canceled for your research project and you're on a college campus somewhere, okay, or at a university, and your funding has been canceled for your project, likely your research, it who cares? Because most likely, if it was worth anything, the private sector would be funding it. Okay, these big companies, they come in and if they want a question answered, they will throw money at the research at these college campuses for these students to research it. The companies will throw money at a research project if it's worthwhile. Okay, now likely if your money has been pulled and you're using taxpayer money, likely I'm just going to go out there. Most projects that use taxpayer money, research that use taxpayer money, not worth doing. Okay. Because if anything that is worth doing, the private sector will come in and they will fund it. Okay. These big companies, if they need a question answered, they will fund it. There's billion-dollar companies out there that need questions answered, and they use the colleges and they fund the colleges to do these research projects. Okay. We're going to get to the former NIH director. Totally cringy. These are theater kids, and they're upset because the federal government has pulled their way of life, pulled their money. And now the college kids, people who don't want to leave the university ever, they are forced to get out and go work and be a part of real life. And they don't like that. So we're going to talk about the NIH director. He sings this anthem at this rally. The rally is called Stand Up for Science. Like I said, just one of these projects that I read about Doge canceling or Doge pulling funding. Okay, that's another thing is like, hey, we're just pulling funding. Okay, he's not saying you can't research this. Just go find somebody in the private sector. You won't be able to because it's not worth anything to fund your research. Okay. Now, one thing that I had read about Doge canceling the funding for was this research project where they were, and I told you guys about this a few weeks ago, where they were researching the how to ask cancer patients their sexual orientation in a way that didn't offend them. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. That it doesn't do anything for cancer. It's not curing cancer. We're just trying to figure out a way to how best to go about asking people if they're straight or not, or if they're gay, right? Pretty easy answer. Just ask them on a questionnaire. Fill in the blank. Fill in the bubble. I mean, I don't know how hard that is, right? To research, and you're researching a way to ask cancer patients what their sexual orientation is. I just don't understand that. And we were funding it with our tax dollars. Any research that is worth anything is going to be funded by the private sector. It just will be. So we're going to get to all of it here on Conservative Cat. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Let's get to this freak out on the airline because I want to start with this morning with that a little bit. Because it's an easygoing story, but this is one of the most bizarre freakouts I've ever seen. Okay, so airline freakouts 2025. They've kind of gotten off to a slow start. I haven't seen them, but this happened on Southwest, and it's very shocking. This woman, I don't know if she took too much Xanax or whatever before she got onto the flight, but she stripped naked. Okay, on the flight from Houston to Arizona. Okay, and she traumatized passengers. So she was on this flight and she stripped naked and she paraded around for like 25 minutes on the plane. That was another reason why I thought this was so bizarre. I was like, okay, this took a long time for somebody to realize that, 25 minutes for somebody to parade around naked, that's a bit much. Unclear if charges are going to be filed. Now, first off, I want to say ew. Second off, gross. Thirdly, what in the world is going on? Okay. I understand, anxiety, like I said, is at an all-time high with the plane crashes. Now, plane crashes under Joe Biden. There were plenty of plane crashes. He actually had one more, I believe. I think he had 4 or 5 plane crashes in 2024. And I think it happened within like a 3-4 month span. So that was Joe Biden. Now, under President Donald Trump, I think there's been about 3 or 4, and that's happened in a couple of months span, obviously, a few months, since he's been president in his second term here. But the media didn't report on Joe Biden. You keep hearing about the plane crashes now, or you're hearing about the plane crashes now under President Donald Trump because it's Donald Trump and they have severe TDS, okay, the media. But we all know that under Joe Biden, the same problem was happening. The plane crashes were happening under Joe Biden at an alarming rate. This is a bit much. According to the New York Post, the plane was, going down the runway, and they were departing Hobby Airport in Houston, Texas, when this woman, fully clothed at the time, walked in front of the plane and demanded to be left off the plane. When the aircraft continued to move, okay, the passenger stripped off all of her clothes, according to ABC 10. And one of the witnesses, they said, quote, they're quoted in the New York Post here, "It's very evident that she was having a mental breakdown. Undressing got her off of the plane, obviously, pretty fat. But it took 25 minutes. That's what I'm saying. I just don't understand why it took 25 minutes. You strip down naked, automatically, I would be like, okay. I thought there were like air marshals and people that were on the planes that kind of prevented crazy behavior or looked out for that sort of thing. And I thought she would have been tackled, cuffed, and, they would have stopped the plane right away. But nope, 25 minutes, she was parading up and down the aisle here. Undressing and throwing her naked body on a flight attendant. Okay, she started rubbing her body all over this female flight attendant, according to 12 News. And I understand, this is a crime. Okay, this is an obvious crime. You guys can watch this on. I've got the video. If you wanted to watch it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, you're welcome to go watch it there. But I understand, from what I understand, this is crime. Now, you can watch it on YouTube, but it's all blurred out. You can't see anything crazy. So, that left is chill. I'm not showing anything that is inappropriate, but this is just wild. It's all blurred. And this is a viral video. And, I understand that this is a crime and she hasn't been charged yet. And I don't think that she's going to be. That's my problem with this. You're traumatizing somebody physically, assaulting this flight attendant, and you're harassing these innocent people. And this is what happens when we condone mental illness and we allow a mental illness to get out of hand. People like this locked up in a mental institution. And I understand that this is the norm for liberal cities. But this is not something that we should put up with as a society. When people do this sort of stuff, we have to say, okay, we're charging her with public indecency, harassment, okay, and we're going to make sure she's thrown into a mental institution, open up the mental institutions that were shut down by Jimmy Carter. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. Not really, thanks, but you know what I'm saying. These authorities, they are pretty much, from what I'm understanding, it happened here. They gave her a little blanket, a warm glass of milk, and if they don't, charge her, and I understand she's mentally ill. These charges, she's not going, sexual harassment or whatever, public indecency. She's not going to be thrown into jail, right? She needs to get some help, but she needs to also be charged because this was a crime. Okay. And having them give her a glass of warm milk and a blanket, that's not going to stop this sort of behavior, okay? I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We're going to be right back talking a little bit. I don't know about you, but daylight savings time kind of sucks, right? Let me know on our text line, or you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble what you think about daylight savings time. Do you love it, hate it? Do you want to go back to standard? Do you want to do standard time year round? I know I do. I'll be right back. Good morning. Happy Monday. It was a great weekend despite losing an hour of sleep. That sucked. But a lot of people don't like daylight savings time. 54% of Americans, 54% of Americans also really like the work that Doge is doing, by the way. I'd imagine that most Republicans are anti daylight savings time. The only thing is that you have more sunlight in the evenings. And I am not I've always been a morning person. And what do I always say? I always say nothing good happens after 8 o'clock. Okay. So why in the world would you want to be out after 8 o'clock? You should be in bed. You should get up in the morning and be a productive member of society. Why in the world are you out in the evening? I don't understand that. I've always been a morning person. um, in the summers, I guess it's kind of nice to have a little bit of sunlight. It is depressing when you don't see any sun. Um, you know, if we lived in a state that had more sun, I think that it wouldn't matter so much. But um, I don't like daylight savings time. The only argument for it is that you have a little bit extra daylight in the evening, when you should probably be asleep, in my opinion, and energy savings. So I guess you don't have to turn on the lights, you know, uh, until like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever the case may be. And you save some energy because you don't have to turn on all the lights. I don't care. Light some candles. If you're really that concerned about the energy savings, light some candles instead of turning on the lights or something. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, I'm anti daylight savings time. I would love to go to standard time, not mess with the clocks at all. And I'm in the majority. 54% of Americans would like to stick with standard time year round. When we come back, I'm going to be talking a little bit about squatters' rights. This is one of the largest scandals, I think, of our lifetime, my lifetime. The fact that we have judges who have the authority to say who can live where, or who can live in a house that you pay for. Okay, if you pay for a house, you should be able to live in that house. Okay. Unfortunately, this woman, she's had to learn this lesson the hard way, that in this country, judges, they think that they have the authority to decide who lives in the house that you pay for. And unfortunately, this woman, she bought this foreclosed property in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And when she was supposed to move in, on the day she was supposed to move in, she got some unfortunate news. They said that they told her, the judge, the courts, they told her that she couldn't move into the house. Okay. The former resident asked McIntyre if she could move back in. McIntyre declined. Her name is Megan McIntyre. She bought the foreclosed property. When she declined, the courts overruled her decision. And now she has to pay rent for an apartment that she's living in. And then she also has to pay the mortgage on the home that she bought, but has never lived in, and she wants to live in it. Good morning. Appreciate you being here. Go ahead, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got so much to get to this morning. So we're going to get to this because Illinois, our squatters' rights laws are very, very pro-squatter. Okay, most blue states have these squatter rights laws, and I just don't understand it. I think it's the biggest scandal of our lifetime, and of my lifetime. I just can't believe that judges are the decision makers here in who gets to live in the house that you pay for. I'll be right back. You're listening, Conservative Cat. Woo! Happy Monday. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about the story with Megan McIntyre. She's a former resident, the former resident of this house asked if she could move back in. Okay, so Megan McIntyre, she bought a foreclosed property in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and on the day she was supposed to be moving in, okay, she bought this house, foreclosed property. She was supposed to be moving in. She received some bad news. The courts overruled her decision, McIntyre, when she declined that the former resident couldn't move back in, okay, to the house. The courts overruled her decision. And now she's forced to pay rent on an apartment and also the mortgage in a home that she's not living in. Okay, so this is squatter rights. This is Massachusetts. Blue states have them. Illinois does have them. Now, I will say that we have some criteria that you've got to meet. If you are a squatter, Illinois law requires 20 years of continuous exclusive possession for the squatter to file an adverse possession and potentially gain ownership of the property. Still really garbage. It's really, really bad in blue states. This is the biggest scandal, I think, of my lifetime, your lifetime, where we have judges going out and saying and making the decision here of who gets to live in the property despite you paying for the property. All right. So they have the authority to decide, these judges, who can live in the on the property when you pay for the property, when you pay for the house. Unfortunately, this one woman, Megan McIntyre, she had to learn this lesson the hard way because the courts told her that she has to allow this former resident, whose name I didn't get, but this former resident, she wants to live in this house, continue living in this house, despite McIntyre buying the house, the foreclosed house. So let's get to it. According to WHDH, I love to give you the sources. That's one thing we do here. If you're new to Conservative Cat, we do sources. Okay, so I can back up what I'm telling you. This is a real story. Here's what McIntyre said. We got a call actually the day we were moving back up here to Massachusetts. We got a call from someone who's living there previously, never an owner, never a tenant, never paid rent. Okay, she wanted to move back in. And we said, no. Okay, this is our house. We bought it. It's a foreclosed home. We bought this foreclosed home. The next day, we got a call from housing court and we had a court date. This is what McIntyre says. The judge ruled that McIntyre had to give the woman the keys and allow her to stay in the house. Court records show that this woman who was fighting to stay in the house, and she was the daughter of the owner. Okay, so she never, the previous owner. Okay, obviously McIntyre is the new owner because she bought the property. It was foreclosed on. Now the previous owner, she's not even the previous owner. This girl that wants to stay there, it's the daughter of the previous owner who was foreclosed on. She had lived in the house, cared for her mother until she died without a will. Okay, so no will, right? It wasn't left to her, the house or anything like that. The woman told the court she never abandoned the house and was in the hospital when it was sold. So here in Illinois, if you leave the house for a period of time, it has to be continuous possession of the house. You have to be continually living there for 20 years. So you can't go on a vacation for a year, right? Or you can't leave for 6 months even. You have to have continuous, that has to be your continuous residence. I think it's all dumb. Illinois squatter rights laws are dumb. Massachusetts are even dumber. Okay, this is another blue state. But here we go. Court records show that this woman was fighting to stay in the house, daughter of the previous owner. The judge ruled that she could stay in the house, the daughter. Okay, it never paid rent, was never a tenant. She just was the daughter of the previous owner. Okay, it's ridiculous that the courts have required her to assume the responsibility of this housing a stranger. Okay, McIntyre, that is essentially what the courts ruled. They said, okay, you have assumed the responsibility of housing an individual you do not know. This is a complete stranger. None of this makes sense. And the fact that the local courts practice this de facto eminent domain the moment someone claims to have lived there, okay, without even paying a dime, okay, is totally astonishing to me. It is the biggest scandal of my lifetime, your lifetime, squatter rights. So real estate attorney Jordana Greenman said that this case isn't such a shock to her. Okay, so she's a real estate attorney. She sees this probably all of the time. She lives in Massachusetts, a blue state. It's another one of those things that in Massachusetts, with all of the consumer protection laws, nobody can be unhoused per se. This is what the real estate attorney says without a court order. Okay, so housing is a right there. It might boil down to how much they're willing to pay to get this person out. That's how it's kind of like a shakedown. Okay, this person who had bought the foreclosed home, they're trying to shake her down for money. Okay, and that ultimately, when we get to the bottom of the story here, that's ultimately what happened. She has to pay like $7,500 to get this person out. So this real estate agent, she knows what this is all about. This is scammers. Squatters are scammers, and they're trying to get as much money as they can out of these people. Here's what Jordana Greenman, a real estate agent there, says, a real estate attorney. She says, then they'll go. It's really upsetting to watch. It should not be so difficult to get people out. McIntyre said that they had to pay to restore the floors after they ripped up the carpet to replace them. So she paid the utility bill, and then she paid for this woman, this stranger who is not named in this article. She had to pay for this woman to be put up in a hotel and pay for her meals when the heat stopped working in the home. So she was like paying for the housing, and essentially she was a landlord. How horrifying is that? She never signed up to be a landlord. Okay, she has this stranger living in her house that she paid for, a foreclosed home, and she has to pay this person's utility, and she never receives a dime for any of it in return for like rent or anything. This person is not paying her rent. None of this makes sense. I know it doesn't make sense. And this is a right that the government should have never have. Who determines? The judge decides who gets to live in the house you pay for. McIntyre said on top of paying the mortgage, she had to pay HOA fees. She had to pay, obviously, the rent there because she wasn't paying a nickel for living there. She estimated that they were paying $10,000 a month. She also had to pay rent in an apartment that she was staying in because obviously she wasn't paying the house. So they had to pay $10,000 a month in just housing to pay the mortgage and to pay her rent in the apartment they were living in. This is what happens when we call housing a right. On my show, I've told you multiple times, healthcare is not a right. Housing is not a right. You can't promise free things to people for just simply existing. Okay, the worst part about this is the left thinks that this makes them compassionate. This is not compassionate. This is state-sanctioned robbery and depriving people of their property rights. Okay. McIntyre did file an eviction notice to avoid going to trial and dragging this out even more. They came to an agreement under the deal. The woman had to be out at the end of this month, March, and then has to pay. She has got to be out at the end of March, and she pays her. So McIntyre pays the woman who's staying there $7,500 towards a new apartment to be, housed in a new apartment. This is ridiculous. So, this is what my next question would be. If she takes that cash and then decides not to leave, will the courts help her then? Probably not. That's doubtful because this is an agreement that they came to, like a contract. But what's to stop her from taking the cash and saying, nope, I have squatter rights still, and I'm not leaving. I'm going to keep the cash and I'm going to stay here. I don't know if the courts would continue to help her stay in this house, even after, coming to this agreement and taking the money and just saying, screw you, I'm going to stay here. Moral of the story, never buy a foreclosed home in a blue state. Anybody, can come up and say, because she wasn't even the owner, the previous owner who was foreclosed on. Okay. I think I could kind of see, even then, I mean, that's a stretch. If this was like a previous owner and they were foreclosed on, maybe, but this wasn't even a previous owner. She claimed to have lived there with the previous owner, with her mother, and she was taking care of her mother. This is just ridiculous. Moral of the story, don't buy a foreclosed property in a blue state. Illinois has these things like squatter rights. Now, we have some criteria that you've got to meet. You got to be in the house for 20 plus consecutive years, continuous years. and you can't leave the property. But that's about it. And, I think under our squatter rights, if the same thing, if the Massachusetts story were to happen here in Illinois, likely that squatter the courts would have ruled in favor of the squatter here in the state of Illinois based on our laws. That's what I'm thinking, because when I read the story, it seems like they were there, the previous owners, for a period of time. Now, it's weird because the daughter was never really the owner. So maybe you have to be like a previous owner for 20 plus consecutive years or something like that. I don't know. It's just so nuts. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. You're listening. Yeah, homestead exemption laws. That's what they call it. In some states, they'll say it's homestead exemption laws. Because it sounds better than squatter rights laws. Squatters, that gives a certain connotation. Yeah, it's very confusing because, like, no matter how you try to justify it, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so this person, they were foreclosed on. They didn't pay their bills. Okay, and this was the previous owner. The mother, I'm assuming the mother. Now, the daughter of the mother, she never paid a dime towards that mortgage. Okay. And she's not the owner, okay, and never has been. She wasn't the previous owner. But even the previous owner, okay, if you're not paying off your house, okay, and if you're not giving, because the bank technically owns it, right? When you have a mortgage, the bank owns it, and you're paying back the bank. Housing isn't a right. You have to pay to be housed, okay? And that's the crux of this argument, is that the courts believe that housing is a right, and in these blue states, the laws say that it is a right. In Illinois, you have to live there 20 plus consecutive years, and that's like the criteria of, housing being a right to you, is if you live somewhere for 20 plus consecutive years. Like, that's okay, but you can live somewhere 20 plus consecutive years and never pay a dime towards the mortgage, right? That doesn't mean that you're the owner of the home. Okay, the owner of the home is the person who's continuously paying the mortgage. Like, the owner of the home is the bank until you pay it off, right? And if you're not paying the bank, they're going to foreclose on you. I just don't understand how hard this is, for some people to understand. You don't pay your bills, you're going to be kicked out. That's just the way it works, because you don't own the home. You are paying a mortgage to that home. But this individual never even paid the mortgage. Okay, this is the previous owner. All of the mortgage was in her mother's name. Okay, and she never paid rent. She was never a tenant, never had like a lease agreement or anything. She just claimed to have lived there for 20 years, for over 20, I don't know how many years, but I'm saying in Illinois, you can claim to have lived somewhere 20 years, and that's it. You don't have to have like mortgage, like been paying on the mortgage for 20 years, okay? This is just somebody who occupies the property continuously for 20 years. And has possession of the property for 20 years, not somebody who, is paying 20 years consecutively on a mortgage. So that tells me all I really need to know about these, squatters' rights laws. It's not about, and I understand at that point, if you're paying on a property, and you're paying and you're making your bills on time, and then the bank takes it away from you, although you've been paying, which never happens, right? Because the bank wants their money. If you were paying and then somebody came in, like a bank, and tried to take your house away from you, although you were paying on the mortgage, that would be wrong. And you would have entitlement to that because you're paying, right? And you're paying this mortgage, and you're trying to pay off a loan. That was a contract. It was agreement that you came to with the bank when you bought your home and created a mortgage. They'd be in violation of that agreement if you were paying, in fact, on your mortgage. So, yeah, I know I'm getting kind of into the weeds here, but I don't agree with any of these laws at all. It makes no sense because you're protecting people who don't pay on their mortgages. That's essentially what's going on here. You're protecting people who are occupying a space and have no ownership of that space. They didn't work with the bank for a mortgage, nothing like that. And just because they live somewhere or claim to live somewhere for a period of time, you've granted them complete control of that property despite somebody already paying for it. Okay. So we're getting down to property rights, and if you're paying for a property, you have rights to that property. People who don't pay for that property should not have rights to that property. Okay. And have never paid for that property, they should not have ownership of that property. It gets down to liberals think that housing is a right and housing shouldn't be something you have to pay for. And that's just not fair. I'm back. We're going to get to a few other stories. Go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Woo! Hey, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Yes, this morning I want to talk about there hasn't been meetings since last November. They've canceled meetings. They've not held a meeting. This is the Bloomington Welcoming America Commission, and they're scheduled to meet in just 7 days, March 17th. Okay. Now, I glanced at their agenda. It's posted on blnnews.com. Check it out. And apparently they're going to be talking about, immigration and the issues the immigrant community faces, okay, here locally. This is really interesting. We're not a sanctuary city. I was always under the impression that Bloomington was a sanctuary city because I thought it was just semantics. But I remember when they passed this ordinance, it was called a welcoming city status, like a welcoming city ordinance. And kind of smart, if you were working with a liberal majority council back then. It's a way to prevent the passage of sanctuary city status. Now, it really doesn't matter because we're a sanctuary state, okay, thanks to the Democrat Party. Illinois is a sanctuary state. And we've talked about the Illinois Trust Act, okay, before multiple times, and law enforcement is kind of using this as a way to say, oh, we can't work with ICE. That's not true. What the Illinois Trust Act says is essentially, you don't work with ICE unless it's criminal. Okay, so if somebody has a deportation order, that's criminal. If they've illegally entered through the country through an illegal port of entry, that's a criminal offense, and you have to work with the federal authorities. You have to help them. You have to enforce federal immigration laws. Okay. You're obligated, being that you live in the United States, to enforce not only state laws but federal laws as a law enforcement officer. Okay, so the Trust Act, from what I understand and what most state representatives interpret it as, is the Trust Act is all about non-criminal immigration enforcement. So say an immigrant is working at Rivian, okay, on an H-1B visa or work visa or whatever, okay, and ICE, or, the federal immigration authorities, they're like, okay, wait a second, they didn't turn in the necessary paperwork to prove that they are still working at Rivian. So we don't know if we can grant them a work visa or not, because they didn't turn in the necessary paperwork to prove that they're working at Rivian still. It is not the local law enforcement's job to help the federal immigration authorities process paperwork and to determine if somebody has an illegal status. Deportation orders is proof you're here illegally. We've obtained through a legal court a deportation order. We know that you're here illegally, and we've already got an order for your deportation, okay? So that's criminal. Like, we already know that you've illegally entered through the country, or through an illegal port of entry, or you've overstayed your work visa or student visa, or we know because we have the necessary paperwork and we obtained a deportation order. The federal authorities can't, Maria working at Rivian, they can't, call Maria in to sit down with the federal immigration authorities and have immigration authorities grill her on why she didn't turn in her work visa. Okay, that would be out of the purview of local law enforcement because they're not immigration authorities. They're not the ones who have to determine whose status is legal or not. Okay, that's not up to them. So a lot of people misinterpret the Illinois Trust Act. People say that the Illinois Trust Act prevents law enforcement from holding alien criminals um, accountable, and that's just not true. The Trust Act is, if it's criminal, then you have to work with the federal immigration to enforce federal law. Okay, just because you are an Illinois state police officer or you're a local officer here in Bloomington, you are obligated to enforce not only the state laws and the local laws, but also the federal laws. Why? Because you live in the United States. Okay. Um, so the Illinois Trust Act, people misinterpret that, but they're using that as the Democrats and law enforcement, they're using that as a cop out to say, hey, we don't have to work with the feds on deportation orders. And that's just not true. It's so silly. So here in the state, or here in the city of Bloomington, we are what's called a welcoming city. So that's a little bit different than a sanctuary city. A welcoming city is more of a symbolic designation. This is according to BL News. AI has defined this, ChatGPT defined this as a symbolic designation, emphasizing inclusion and support for immigrants regardless of their status. Okay. Now, sanctuary city is limits federal immigration enforcement authorities such as ICE in these cities to carry out legal deportation orders. Now, a sanctuary city is unconstitutional because you're determining somebody's status, okay? And states can't do that, cities can't do that because of the 14th Amendment that was drafted because the southern states tried to say that about the freed black slaves, like that they weren't citizens. You can't determine somebody's citizenship status. Um, and yeah, the sanctuary city is different than a welcoming city. Welcoming city is kind of more symbolic than anything. So it's going to be interesting this March 17th, the Welcoming Commission, or what is it? The Welcoming America Commission, Bloomington's Welcoming America Commission. They haven't really met since last November, but now they're going to talk about the immigrant community and what they face. We are likely going to lose all of our federal funds because Illinois is hiding behind this Trust Act, not working with federal authorities to enforce federal immigration laws. And we're going to lose our federal funds. And, that's going to be tragic because Illinois is in a financial hole as it is. What is it? 3.2, some crazy number, $1 billion in the hole. Okay. We can't afford losing federal funding as well. So yeah, I don't know, being in Illinois and pretending you're a sanctuary state, although that's unconstitutional, it seems like a waste of money. And it's unconstitutional. It's a waste of money to me. We definitely need the federal funding. Okay, we're not one of these states that has an abundance of money and funds coming in because we mismanage our funds and we spend money on illegals all the time. But yeah, so that's the difference. They're going to be meeting March 17th. I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Yes, we are going to get to the NIH director. You guys like this one. The former NIH director. He's out there playing a guitar. Francis Collins, he broke out in song at a Stand Up for Science rally. Look, a lot of these universities, college campuses, they're screaming at the sky because they're upset their funding has been canceled by DOGE. Anything worth researching is going to be paid for by the private sector. Okay, so private companies, they will throw money if they want a question answered. They will throw money at colleges and universities to research until they get the answer. Okay, a lot of what's being cut by DOGE are research projects that don't really matter. One research project that I told you about, it was trying to figure out a way to properly ask cancer patients about their sexual orientation. That's just ridiculous. Why in the hell are taxpayers funding that? Multiple things I want to get to this morning, including this is interesting. On Chad Burke's social media, he says this about his running, his opponent here that he's running against for the Normal Township. Now, we know that April 1st is the election. He says that Crystal Label has identified as a Democrat socialist multiple times. Her personal financial issues with the past due bills with public utilities requiring a forced payment plan as recent as November. These are backed by public records that she has personal issues with her finances. And that's backed by public records, apparently on a forced payment plan. This is according to Chad Burke. Okay, I haven't seen any of these public records. Her opponent running in the Normal Township race. The only reason why I wouldn't vote if I was a normal, right, and voting for township supervisor, the only reason why I don't think that it's in your best interest to put somebody in there who also serves as a McLean County board member. It's a conflict of interest. We see what happens in communities like Tiffany Henyard. She calls herself super mayor. It's because she's this township supervisor, Thornton Township supervisor. She's also the Dalton mayor. That is, to me, a conflict of interest, and she shouldn't even be holding two offices. And this is like I forget how much money you get as a normal township supervisor. It's thousands of dollars in salary. She also gets a stipend as a McLean County board member. So I just think that it's a conflict of interest, and that would be the sole reason why, I wouldn't vote for somebody who has a conflict of interest. Now it's apparently backed by public records that she has personal financial issues. Chad Burke raised the question here: should someone who fails to manage her personal finances be responsible for all of normal finances? Abel is currently serving as a county board member for District 4, where she ran unopposed. She has not made it clear if she will resign from her county seat if she wins or attempt to serve both at the same time. Where should her focus be if she were to win? Okay, if she were to win, she hasn't made it clear if she's going to resign from both of her positions. Now, she has told me, when I asked, I pointed out, hey, you're going to be serving in two positions. It's kind of like a conflict of interest. Crystal Label had commented back on social media. She goes, well, Catherine Metzger did it as well. So I think it was, oh gosh, it was some sort of township there in rural McLean County. From getting the name, but Catherine Metzger did the same thing. I also, with Catherine Metzger, although she's a Republican, Crystal Label is a Democrat, I would also say that's a conflict of interest and shouldn't be happening. Look what is going on with Tiffany Henyard right now. She uses both positions, and as a Thornton Township supervisor and as the mayor of Dalton, she uses both these positions. And she does corrupt things. Okay, so there's a possibility of corruption when you're serving in both these offices. It opens the door for possible corruption. So I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Happy Monday. I know you're probably exhausted from daylight savings time. I am. I can't stand daylight saving times. I really would just want standard time year round. You get more sleep. There's less health issues. There's been study after study that shows that there's more increased risk to heart attack, stroke, things like that. And look, I'm a morning person. I want more daylight in the morning. I would love to wake up and see the sunrise. I never get to see the sunrise, obviously, because of the show. But I would love for the sunrise to be earlier, a little bit earlier, because I just miss it. I won't be able to ever see it. And I just think that people need to wake up earlier. I really do. I think that you're more productive in the morning. I think and I'm biased. I love mornings, always have. And I just can't wait to start my day, and I can't wait to go to bed. Okay, so 8 o'clock, nothing really happens good after 8 o'clock. That's what I always tell people. And there's no reason for you to be out at night like that. I know, I sound like I'm 70 years old. I'm 25, I swear. But nothing ever really good happens at night anyway. And the only argument for daylight saving times that the liberals say, energy savings. You don't use your lights for a longer period of time because it's still light out at night. Maybe more daylight reduces the number of traffic accidents. But like I said, there's really no reason why you should be going out, late anyway after 8 o'clock. Stay home and get to bed and get productive in the morning, right? And just start your day. That's what we're doing here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. We're starting our day with some good news. Well, hilarious news. I shouldn't say it's good news. It's kind of embarrassing. We have the former NIH director, Francis Collins. He broke out in song. Yes, he broke out in song, brought a guitar to this rally. It's called Stand Up for Science. That's what this rally is called. And a lot of my liberal friends from high school. I was a theater kid, so I had a lot of theater kids friends. They all grew up to, be suckling at the teat of the taxpayer their entire lives. And they didn't want to go and join the public sector or the private sector and actually make something and create something that somebody would want to pay for. They wanted to stay in college and make money off of the taxpayer teat and suckle at the taxpayer teat. So the theater kids, they're no longer in control of the federal government, and they're not happy about it. Take a listen here to Francis Collins. They're at this a stand up for science thing. It's a rally. Look, all of the research that Doge has been cutting, like the federal dollars going to these research projects, these research projects are dumb. Okay, if they were worth anything, the private sector would already be funding it. These companies, ComEd, these major companies, corporations, they will, the car industry, they will throw money. If they have a question, they will throw money at these college students and at these universities to answer the question. The people in the private sector will do that. Medicine, cancer research, things like that. People who are in the private sector, they will throw money at a good research project. Okay. Now, if you're studying how to properly ask cancer patients their sexual orientation, that's dumb. That's actually something Doge cut. Okay. It's dumb project. It doesn't help anybody. Okay. It doesn't help cure cancer. There are research projects out there that are worth funding. And guess what? The private sector does it. Why? Because it's worth funding. Let's take a listen to Francis Collins before I get too heated here. Here we go.
Joined together by this noble dream. You got that? So it's just all the good people, but the second line, part of this family, and the last line, we're joined together by this noble dream. Do that with me. This is a song for all the good people. Come on. All the good people who are part of this family. This is a song for all the good people. We're joined together by this noble dream. Well, this is a song for all of those dreamers. We're looking for answers to come our way. Scientists, doctors, students, all seekers who share in the hopes for a much brighter day. Come on now. Well, this is a song for all the good people, all the good people who are part of this family. This is a song for all the good people.
Oh, stop. I know. My head is like physically hurting now after listening to that. So, thousands of researchers, supporters, recently fired federal workers. Like I said, CNN did a poll. 51% of people are pro firing federal workers in these government agencies, by the way. So a lot of fired federal workers, researchers, and supporters, they gathered in front of Lincoln Memorial, and they protested what they considered to be anti-science actions by President Donald Trump. The nation's capital is just one of many locations hosting rallies like this. It's called Stand Up for Science. There were 30 events nationwide. There were some even internationally, I guess, and it brought up the total to 150 events. I think that's a stretch. I'm looking at these numbers. It's in the Science magazine or Science publication. It's called Science. Look, this little stunt that this NIH, this is our former NIH director, by the way. He grabbed a guitar and started singing. The theater kids are mad that they don't control the federal government anymore, and it's kind of like I told somebody this. I was like, it's kind of like Elon Musk is like a chess club guy, and the football team, like they joined together and then they started bullying the theater kids. This is kind of how I like see this. They formed an alliance against the dweeby theater kids. So I highly, highly doubt that this song is going to do anything to bring their funding back for transgender mice, transing the mice. I don't think that this song is going to do anything to get your funding back, dude. But this guy, he defended, and just to give you some insight on who this guy is with the guitar, this is the man who defended school closures during COVID-19. Devastating effects on children. We're starting to see that now, the devastating effects on kids, suicide rates. It's just so disgusting that they advocated for school closures. You don't need a science degree to understand that depriving kids of learning and social interaction is going to have decades long consequences. Okay, this is going to be with the kids for a long time. Yeah, here he is, pitifully playing the guitar, and he's pretending to defend the science. He has no idea what science is all about because he's the guy who defended school closures and defended kids getting vaccinated. So everyone knows that science actually refers to political science, and that's why he pretends to care about it while he's really just playing these cringy songs because he doesn't like Donald Trump. That's what this is all about. This guy is playing cringy songs on his guitar because he has a severe case of TDS. At Washington, D.C., event protesters demanded an end to government censorship of scientific research, restoration of federal funding, reinstatement of federal employees, preservation of diversity and inclusion in science, and more. This is ridiculous. Like I said, anything worth, like any research that's out there that college students are conducting or the private sector has come in and paid for that research, okay, because they're the ones actually doing it. And the government funding this stuff, it's just so silly because anything worth anything is already funded. Doge is just cutting the stuff that doesn't matter, like transgendering mice, okay, or doing trans surgery on mice. The crowd heard from a dozen speakers like Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat, former Representative Fred Upton, Republican from Michigan, and former National Institute of Health Director Francis Collins. So those are some of the speakers. This was in Washington, D.C. Just this is stupid. These individuals, they're claiming they're trying to end the government censorship of science and research when this is the side that censored Americans during COVID-19 for so-called misinformation. Ivermectin works, vitamin D works, sunlight works, getting outside. When I got COVID, it was when I was a liberal on college campuses, and I was buying into everything that the college was feeding me. And I finally woke up and walked away. But when I got sick, it was when I was social distancing, masking, and not leaving my house. That's when I got sick with COVID-19. I have not had COVID-19 since waking up and taking the mask off and getting some vitamin D. But yeah, these are the people that are like, oh, you're censoring the science. You censored Americans for so-called misinformation. No, you were censoring the science. So everything they accuse you of, they actually did. You censored actual Americans who spoke out and said, hey, I found that, actually going outside and getting vitamin D and vitamin D supplements, I've never gotten COVID because I've been taking vitamin D. Or I took ivermectin and my sniffles went away and totally fine now. Ivermectin works, and those people were censored. These are also the same individuals who claim that, trans women are women. So by trans women, I mean men pretending to be women. So they don't have any idea what science is. And they are all about diversity and inclusion in science, and what that means is asking cancer patients in a very timid way about their sexual orientation and trying to figure out if they're straight or gay. That's what they mean by diversity and inclusion in science, okay? By figuring out a proper way to ask cancer patients if they're gay or straight, which is just ridiculous. This is the most pseudo-scientific group of people ever. Okay, they are subscribing to pseudoscience, political science, and really what this is about, it's about TDS. Okay, they have Trump derangement syndrome, and this pathetic little song is all about Trump derangement syndrome that this guy sings. And the people spoke against everything, the science, in November. Okay, in November, when we elected Donald Trump, we elected him to do exactly what he's doing, and defunding a lot of this garbage pseudoscience stuff that they're trying to research with your money. All right, I got to take actually, before we go, I do want to talk a little bit about Jenna Kearns. Okay, so Jenna Kearns, she's running for Bloomington City Council, and I told you a little bit about Chad Berkey had put it on his social media. Crystal Abel and her personal financial issues. I haven't seen any public records. I'm just telling you what her opponent is saying online publicly. He says that Crystal Abel has identified as a Democrat socialist multiple times. Her personal financial issues in the past, with past due bills and public utilities, not paying her bills, required forced payment plan as recent as November. Okay, and he raises the question here: should someone who fails to manage her personal finances be responsible for Normal's finances? Because that's what you do as a township supervisor. I think that in my opinion, it's not right for somebody to be holding two offices. She hasn't come out and said that she was going to resign her McLean County board seat. She's a sitting McLean County board member for District 4. That's a conflict of interest because Normal is in McLean County. The ordinance, McLean County could, via their budget, throw a bunch of money towards the ARC. A lot of what Normal Township does, it's the ARC, okay? And they do a normal, but like they have a budget, and I think it's like $5 million or something like that. And they, decide where money goes. Okay, so McLean County, if she has a special interest in the town of Normal as a Normal Township supervisor, she could try to squeeze money out of. And I'm not saying she would do this, but hypothetically, she'd be in a position, in two positions at once. And Normal is in McLean County, so if she wanted to squeeze McLean County for more money for, say, Normal rather than Bloomington, okay, the township of Bloomington, or any other township for that matter, in McLean County, if she wanted to squeeze more for the township of Normal, she could, okay, or she could get her buddies in the McLean County board to do that for her. So I'm just saying, like, there is a potential for corruption, and we see this play out in multiple places in Illinois. It never works out well for the constituency when you have somebody in multiple positions like that. So Tiffany Henyard, she calls herself super mayor. The reason why is because she's the supervisor township Thornton Township supervisor, and she is also the Dalton mayor. Okay, so we've seen what goes on with that. I mean, the corruption has is rampant there. Okay, so she's being investigated by the FBI for it now. So I want to get to Jenna Kearns. Jenna Kearns, she currently sits on the city council. She ran unopposed. This is what Chad Burke says in the last election. She marks her city service by refusing to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, that actually happens, where she refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of each meeting. This is documented on city video records. Yes, I've seen this. This happened. I know at least once or twice where Jenna Kearns does not say the Pledge of Allegiance, which is just ridiculous to me. It's anti-American. But She recently voted. This is the big deal one, okay? Especially with the death of Cole Turner, okay? And everybody was in Uptown, I think, protesting this, or in downtown Bloomington somewhere. They were protesting this. I saw the signs. I saw the pictures. With Cole Turner, the 15-year-old that was shot. I believe he had a gun, right? I mean, with the police. I haven't seen any of the footage, so I'm not going to talk about the police shooting, the police-involved shooting. But I do know in the aftermath here, Jenna Kearns is not doing her part as a council member for this public safety community relations board. Okay. So this board, the whole purpose of this board is when there's police officer involved shootings, there's things like that that happen. People can go, of course, and file with the Bloomington Police Department a complaint is saying, hey, I think that the officer conduct here was not correct, and I'd like to file a complaint with the Bloomington Police. Now, if the Bloomington Police rule that everything is fine, the officer conducted himself accordingly, then if you're not satisfied with the determination of the Bloomington Police, you can take it to the Public Safety Board of Relations. Okay. Now they haven't met the board of or the Public Safety Community Relations Review Board. They haven't met because, and they haven't had decorum because they don't have two members. Okay. Because Jenna Kearns and multiple others on the board, they are pro having children, and I'm not kidding you, 16 to 21 years old or whatever, which I don't care about the 18, 19, and 20 years old, whatever. 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds should not be serving on this board. They deal with officer conduct issues, which is traumatizing, right? For 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, they're going to have to review the footage, obviously, probably, of officer-related shootings. This is just not a place for children, right? But they are hell-bent on making sure that there's teenagers on this board. She supported one teen on that board who publicly stated that they were anti-police to be placed on the board. The board hasn't been able to hold meetings because they can't find teenagers to serve on the board. Why? Because teens want to be teens, kids want to be kids, and they don't want to be serving on a board where they have to, watch officer conduct issues. So the reason why they haven't met is because, and recently they tried to change those rules. Okay, so the PSCRB, the Public Safety Community Relations Review Board, what they tried to do is they tried to change that requirement. Okay, where they have to have these teenagers, 2 seats be teenagers on the board, essentially. So they tried to change that, and Jenna Kearns voted down along with other council members. We cannot afford, especially, look at what happened to Cole Turner. They should be able to be reviewing these officer conduct cases. And this is a very important board where they can review, and it's kind of like an independent body from the police department who can observe and rule on officer conduct issues. Okay. But they haven't been able to meet because they haven't been able to get enough people to serve on the board. Why? Because of the stupid requirement to have kids on it. And Jenna Kearns is pro having kids on this board, which is just wild to me. But anyway, I wanted to get to that. That was a local thing, a local little tidbit. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you being here every single morning, Monday through Friday. Happy Monday. Maybe you're exhausted from daylight savings time. The clock sprung forward. You lost an hour of sleep. I wish we could just go to standard time and not mess with the clocks at all. Most Americans believe that that's what we should do. 54% of them, actually, a fun little fact, 54% of Americans actually approve of what Doge is doing so far. 51% of Americans believe that staff should be fired in these federal agencies, and they agree with staff being fired in these federal agencies. I've got so much to get to. Before we took break, I was telling you a little bit about Jenna Kearns. Jenna Kearns, she's partly responsible for this, where the Public Safety Relations Community Relations Board, and what they do is they review officer misconduct. Okay, so everybody's really upset about Cole Turner. I haven't seen the footage. 15-year-old, from what I understand, there was a gun. Okay, and there was an officer-related shooting. An officer-involved shooting with Cole Turney, who's 15 years old. Tragedy. Anytime that happens with a kid, it's just absolutely awful. So tragic. But I mean, if the officers' lives were in danger, I don't know because I didn't see the body cam footage. If he had a gun and the officers' lives were in danger, I mean, that's protocol, right? You have to, and if others were in danger because there was a gun involved, obviously an officer-involved shooting would be justified. Now, perhaps, after reviewing footage, the mother, somebody who's close to Cole Turner, could turn in a complaint to the Bloomington Police Department, okay, and say that I don't believe that the officer shooting was justified, okay? Now the Bloomington Police Department would come to some sort of conclusion. Now, if the mother, or, say somebody close to Cole Turner didn't agree with that conclusion or with that solution, or, with the findings or the results of that finding of the officer-involved shooting, if they didn't agree, the mom could take the complaint to, say, the Public Safety Community Relations Board. Unfortunately, the Community Relations Board here, they haven't met for a very long time. Because they can't reach quorum. They have 2 seats that are vacant and have been for a long time, because there is a requirement Jenna Kearns is a proponent of, making sure that there are children 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I'm not opposed to 18, 19, 21 years olds, 21-year-olds being on that board. If you're an adult, sure, whatever, be on the board. But if you're a child, I'm opposed to that. That's insane that you're asking children to review such sensitive cases. They're 16 years old, they're 17 years old, and you're asking them to review sometimes footage of officers shooting a 15-year-old. I mean, that's ridiculous that we have that requirement of these 2 seats, that they have to be kids in the first place. But they haven't been able to find anybody, obviously, because young kids don't want to serve on a board like that. They want to be kids, okay? They want to go and hang out with their friends at the movie theaters. They don't want to be, going Tuesday nights and meeting and reviewing footage of officer-related shootings. There's been 2 vacancies on this board, and they haven't been meeting. And we can't afford that, obviously, because of the tragedy of Cole Turner. We can't afford, having a board like that not working for the community. And you can blame, multiple people on the Bloomington City Council voted for this, where they, the board itself, the chair of the board, came before the council and said, hey, we would love to get rid of this requirement. We would love to get rid of this requirement. Please, let's get rid of this requirement where these 2 seats have to be kids, where, they can be kids. If they are, great. If they're not, well, we've got to fill this so we can meet and so we can operate as a board. But they said, nope, we're going to keep the requirement. That's what the Bloomington City Council did. So absolutely ridiculous. That's who's on your ballot, Jenna Kearns. Okay. Also doesn't stand for the pledge. I want to get to this story. Shifting gears, Coachella Council member Yadira Perez. Okay. Now, this is in California. Her husband wasn't perfect. That's what she says, okay? And by that, she means, yes, he broke federal immigration laws. Yes, he broke other laws in this country. And he has an extensive criminal record. And he was living illegally in this country for decades. So Perez thought that that was all perfectly normal. Yes, he legally entered the country. No, he hasn't gotten a work visa, a green card, nothing like that. And she says that her husband was targeted by enforcement action here because he was deported. There was a deportation order. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
My husband away. These are FBI agents who work for Border Patrol. Okay? I want everybody to know.
8 FBI agents surrounded us, and they said that they had a deportation order for my husband. They never showed me anything. They never showed my husband anything.
She says they've been married 2 decades and he's lived in the United States 30 years.
I don't know what to do. My husband has lived in this country longer than he's lived in his own country. We have a family.
Did your husband have a criminal record?
My husband wasn't perfect. But whatever he did, he paid for it. And he had been here doing everything he had to do. We did our taxes.
Okay, so yes, you might have heard that beep. I think it was a fire alarm beeping, like the batteries need to be changed. That was in the video there. But she is hysterically losing her mind here. And the reason why is because ICE agents did their job and they carried out a deportation order for a guy that had an extensive criminal record. He wasn't a perfect man. Okay, by not being a perfect man, several DUIs, assault with a deadly weapon, extensive criminal history here. Okay, so he's the husband of the city council. So she's a city council member in California. He was arrested by ICE agents in a Walmart parking lot for his illegal reentry into the United States. So he's already deported, okay, once, and then he came back and illegally entered through the country again. Isidro Jimenez, 51 years of age, husband to the Coachella City Council member Yadira Perez, was arrested in February for his illegal entry into the United States after being deported in 1995. He was convicted on drug charges as well. And that's what resulted in the 1995 deportation. Yadira recorded her husband's arrest. Obviously, I played the video for you. There was her husband being removed by several ICE agents and carrying out a deportation order. The fact that the council member believes that her husband is above the law tells you all you really need to know. This guy is the drug charges, then DUIs, then deadly assault with a weapon, like extensive criminal record on top of illegally entering after he was deported in 1995. So he's a criminal alien. I don't understand how somebody married to a criminal alien. This is on top of like criminal and illegally entered the country. I don't know how somebody like that serves as a public official in the state of California. That speaks volumes as to how the sanctuary state kind of works over there in California. Why people would elect her, I don't know. But he was convicted by the Superior Court of California in August of 1994, possession of a controlled substance for sale. The Immigration and Naturalization, so INS at the time, arrested Jimenez and removed him to Mexico, okay, back in 1994. Now, this is over 20 years ago. And they deported him. He ordered deportation in 1995, okay? He re-entered the U.S. at some unknown time and at unknown location, okay, after the deportation was carried out in 1995. And this is incredible. He re-entered after being deported. This is a level of entitlement that is absolutely insane. Okay, California seems to be making it extremely easy for illegals to live comfortably for decades. Okay, and he, on top of it, like, so he was deported, entered at some unknown time at an unknown location. He entered the country again after his deportation in 1995, racked up a bunch more criminal charges, including deadly assault with a weapon, or assault with a deadly weapon, and then DUIs. Okay, so he's racked up quite the record. So that just goes to show you how California is operating there. Illegal aliens can live comfortably in terrorized communities, even after they've been deported and told that they can't be here. Okay, so the state despises voter ID laws, but I don't know. I hope that he didn't wind up voting for his wife. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case in her council race. If the husband there, he was living there for 2 decades, the likelihood that he was voting for his wife as an illegal alien, probably pretty high. And I know the state despises voter ID laws, but this is exactly why you need them. Because this guy, for 2 decades, since 1995, probably at some unknown time, he came back, probably 1996, I wouldn't doubt it, right after he was deported. He just came right back in, and he lived in California comfortably and racking up all of these charges. My husband's not perfect. He's not a perfect man. I understand, but like, what? Assault with a deadly weapon? DUI after DUI? This is insane. All right, I gotta take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Good morning. You know, I was looking at gunsavelife.com, and there's an opinion piece out there that talks about Colt Turner, and he lives very close. The guy who wrote this opinion piece, very close to the incident that happened with Colt Turner where he died. Now, from what I understand, many witnesses said that he had a gun. He was waving it around in a menacing manner. This is really interesting in this opinion piece. Now, this was published in October 2024, WEK. They reported on Normal Police. Now, this was prior to, obviously, this incident. This is in October 2024. Here's a report. Normal Police said that there's been a peaceful conclusion to a standoff with the surrender of a teenage boy who barricaded himself in a North Normal duplex. Police Chief Steve Petrelli said the juvenile said he was armed with a gun, but officers found no weapons after the boy surrendered at about 7 p.m. Police were called at about 1:30 p.m. to the corner of Northbrook Drive and Orlando Avenue for a domestic incident. Chief credits the department's crisis negotiation team for peacefully resolving the standoff. Okay, so the teenager in this case in 2024, believed to be, at least according to gunsafelife.com, is Colt Turner. So known to police, barricaded himself in 2024 in this apartment or in this duplex. He said people in the neighboring duplex were evacuated and the police blocked traffic to the area. No, they didn't find any weapons or anything like that. But I don't know. It's always tragic. This is a young teen, young kid. However, you know, gun waving it around. You know, there's protocol. You can't take risk with that sort of stuff if the officers' lives were in danger. But even the community, the greater community, this is a 15-year-old waving a gun around. Clearly, you know, has had mental instability in the past. With this 2024 incident, I wish he would have gotten the help he needed. You know, he was kicked out, I think, of normal schools. And it's just so tragic. And what's really tragic, and I've been talking about this morning, is that Public Safety Review Board. It's very important that we get that up and running. Unfortunately, Democrats have been holding this board sort of hostage because they're requiring teenagers to serve on this board. It's important that the mom is going to be able to file the complaint also with, you know, say the Bloomington with the Bloomington Police Department about the officer's conduct. Once the footage is released, we're going to know more. But from what I understand, if there's multiple witnesses saying that he was waving the gun in a menacing manner, the only thing, and now if he had gone to, and I don't know because I haven't seen the footage, if he had gone to put the gun down, okay, and the officer shot anyway, that would be a big problem. The officers, obviously the protocol, hey, put the gun down. And if he refused to do that and still was waving it at them in a menacing manner, that's, I mean, that you can't take risk with that, even if the gun wasn't real, if it looked real, right? And from a distance, can't take chances with that, you know, mentally unstable person waving a gun around. The police had to act, right? Now the case, and I don't know because I haven't seen the footage, if this teen was told, you know, hey, put the gun down, and he was on his way to put the gun down and the police shot him anyway, that would be a case, obviously, of police misconduct. And from there, she would have to file a complaint, the mother, with the Bloomington Police Department. And from there, if she didn't agree with the findings of that complaint from the Bloomington Police Department, she should be able to go to the Public Safety Review Board. Unfortunately, Jenna Kearns and multiple Democrats on the Bloomington City Council have held this board sort of hostage from doing their job. And I don't know if they'd be able to review the complaint because they don't have enough members, because they won't get rid of this rule where teens have to serve on this board. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to get to the Starbucks employee. He's claiming that he had his heterosexuality weaponized against him at his previous job, and they fired him because he was heterosexual, so because he was straight. And he's claiming that he was fired because he was a heterosexual, gender-typical man. Christopher Thevenson is his name, and he has filed a lawsuit under New York State human rights law, and this was obtained by The Independent, the lawsuit, and he kind of goes on the record here, and he says that my sexuality was weaponized against me while I was working at Starbucks. So this is interesting. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Like I said, I haven't seen the footage or anything like that. Now, it's worth noting his background here. So in 2024, we have a case where he barricaded himself in this duplex, and the police were able to, peacefully resolve that situation, but it was a matter of time. Okay, that sounds like the kid might have been a ticking time bomb. Okay, so it's tragic. It's sad. I don't know if he had a father in the household. That is really a big problem. With poverty in poor communities, fatherless homes, and a lack of discipline. And I don't know. I have no idea, but I just know that there is an overarching trend with our youth, and you're starting to see. I think it was in New York City. I think it was Brooklyn. They this McDonald's, they are carting people at the door because the kids are going in and they're throwing ice cubes at customers. They're smoking marijuana. They're stealing food from the Uber drivers. There's an epidemic, really, of young people acting chaotically and not acting with discipline. And I'm not saying that's, I have no idea if it's the fault of the mother or the fault of the parenting style of Cole Turner that Cole Turner had. I'm not going to sit here and speculate any of that, but there's in our public school system, where the kids spend the majority of their day, 8 hours a day, there is a lack of discipline as well. And they don't do it correctly in some cases where they, I think it was an El Paso school bus driver, the video I watched. I mean, that's just not proper discipline. And I mean, it's tough because you don't want strangers disciplining your child, but you also need discipline. So that's why I say public school is just terrible. And they're attacking homeschoolers now here in the state of Illinois. We know that bill, thousands of witness slips at this point. I think it's HB 2827, where they're going to require homeschoolers to notify the public school system that they're homeschooling, and they're going after homeschoolers now in the state of Illinois. And that's really the only correct solution, where you keep the kids at home, you discipline them, you as the parent, and you choose a discipline style. Because if you don't discipline your child, guess what? The police are going to do it. They're going to do it for you. If the public school system doesn't discipline your child, the police are going to do it. Okay. And there's an epidemic. There's an epidemic of kids acting just insane, chaotically. They've gotten out of control to the point where you've got places in New York City where they're carting people at the door to get a burger. Okay. Because the young people have gotten crazy. And that just shows me that there is a lack of accountability for these teenagers. This kid obviously had multiple adults in his life. He was at he was kicked out of normal schools, and he was at a juveniles type school. And there he should have been getting the help that he needed, right? If this is like an alternative school, they should be trained, specialized, you would think, right, in dealing with children with behavioral issues. But unfortunately, it seems like it just progressed from 2024 in October to a point where he was waving around what appeared to be a gun in a menacing manner. And it's just tragic. It's just sad all the way around. I'm praying for the family who lost Cole. It's just so sad. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you being here. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Christopher Thevenson. Okay, so he is now working at a bank. He was reluctant to comment with The Independent before consulting with his attorney, Neil Flynn, but he has filed a lawsuit now with the human rights law, New York State human rights law. And he filed a lawsuit because the employees were harassing him because he was heterosexual and he was a gender typical man. and they created a hostile work environment. This is what he claims in the lawsuit. Okay, so he's 47 years old. He was a model employee who performed the essential functions of his employment in an exemplary fashion. Okay, this is what the suit says. However, he contends his LGBTQ plus coworkers created a hostile work environment for him because he was straight and because he was gender typical. Okay, so he wasn't trans or anything like that. And the higher ups allegedly fired him when he complained about his coworkers being hostile towards him for being straight. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is true, because we live in a time where fitting in identity groups is seen as some sort of accomplishment. If you're gay, you've accomplished something because of your bedroom preferences, which is just insane. DEI, it's all based off of your, insignificant birth rates, bedroom preferences, and it's not uncommon to see people punished for not having the politically correct orientation. So he didn't have a politically correct orientation, and he apparently had a very hostile work environment with his coworkers. They're leftists. They make these traits their entire identity. Okay. And they put themselves into this victim class and they embody these characteristics. So, it's not unsurprising to see these individuals punish people for traits that the majority of the population has. They think that you should be a victim like them. They want to victimize you because they have it in their head, baked into their head that they're a victim and they're upset that you're not a victim, right? And it's just abusive behavior because they've made their entire identity these insignificant traits or these insignificant sexual preferences. So the company had an obligation to make sure that this workplace was free of harassment, okay, no matter what sexual orientation. So Starbucks may or may not be guilty. I don't know if of what they're accused of. We'll have to see with this lawsuit, but I think we're living in a time where this is unsurprising to me to see a straight man discriminated against or harassed simply because he prefers something, that his coworkers don't prefer. So, we'll have to see, but you shouldn't hire people based on their sexual orientation or their insignificant birth traits like their skin color. You shouldn't promote people based on their bedroom preferences. And the sooner people realize that, the better off we're going to be as a society. All right, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you so much. We're going to be back tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., bright and early. Be sure to find us on cities929.com. Cities929.com, you can actually click on our steals and deals right now. We've got some really cool deals going. It's real easy. You go to cities929.com, and then there's a steals and deals logo. You click on that, and you can get gift cards for like half off to Rainstorm Car Wash, $25 gift certificate for half off on track car wash. You get a $50 gift certificate for half off, $25. We've got things going on. Go ahead and check it out, cities929.com. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Try to get some rest. Catch up on your sleep tonight because of daylight savings time. I know I will be. Bye-bye. I love you.